All right, let's get started. How are you today? Excellent. Thank you for spending your time today in Diversity and Inclusion Week. My name is Maureen Taylor. I'm the director of the School of Advertising and Public Relations, and I will serve as your moderator today for this panel entitled Immigration and Respect for the American Dream. We're very fortunate today to have experts and people who have lived the immigrant story. We're going to start today with Professor Nick Geithner, who's going to show a video that he's been working on about refugees. Our other panelist is Sarah Akalu, who is a UT student, and she's going to tell you about her experience. Our third speaker is Claudia Caballero, who is the executive director of Centro Hispano. And we have one more person who's missing. She's probably looking for a parking space. Is that easy on this campus? No. All right. So hopefully she's going to come in halfway through or even a little earlier and tell us her story. So one of the first things that I want you to do is to know the panelists. So you spend about a minute talking about yourself and your experience, and then we'll move into Nick's video.
My name is Nick Geithner. I'm an associate professor here in the School of Journalism, and I run Land Grant Films, which is a documentary production house within the School of Journalism. And we've done a number of different films, but for the last year we worked on a documentary following a Burundi family as they resettled here in Knoxville, and that's the work that we're going to be showing today, and we hope to be sharing it with the community sometime in the next couple months, the full film.
Thank you. Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Akalu. I'm a senior psychology student here at UT. I am a native of the beautiful land of Ethiopia in East Africa. I came to the States May of 2000 when I was 6 years old. I have experienced a lot with the whole migrating here from another country and becoming aware of this country's dreams and the values, and I've been so excited to share with you guys.
Thank you.
My name is Claudia Caballero. I am originally from Honduras. I've been in Knoxville, Tennessee for about a year and a month, and I'm the executive director at Centro Hispano de East Tennessee. As anyone who's moved from anywhere, it doesn't really matter if you're out of the country or from a different state or a different city, everything is different. And when you come as an immigrant, there isn't exactly a school to teach you. There isn't an orientation that says this is how it works here. So Centro Hispano does a lot of that, and helping people be good citizens, and that's not just the clients we serve, it is also volunteers that come in and also do their duty as good citizens, helping their communities. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Excellent. All right, we have 3 different perspectives. Nick, would you please start? Should we put the lights down? What's best?
I think you just hit the...
Hit the bottom one?
Yeah.
Don't go to sleep.
Good.
The flight arrives, and we'll know them by their little IOM bags, and of course we'll have their family here, luckily, and get the bags, do introductions. An interpreter will be there with me. They'll have food here provided by their family members, and that's really it for the first day. I want them to get a good night's sleep and relax and enjoy each other.
ndayishimiye Zabroni jewe mu bisanzwe ndi umurundi ariko twaje ngaha muri Amerika tuva mu nkambi ya Nyarugusu iri mu gihugu ca Tanzania mu kuzino kampunzi twaje no kubw'ingorane zitandukanye tuba twarahuye nazo mu gihugu c'amavukiro.
Any questions about the bus?
ikibazo kizanye basi mtatahuye kizanye urugero rw'ibasi cyo mtatahuye
Menya sasa
okay he says to know exactly where you are going.
Yeah, that's hard.
Atari no bigoye sino bigoye.
I tell people this.
Yes.
Thank you for calling Experience Verification Services. My name is Eric. Are you calling in to verify your identity check?
Not mine, but my clients.
Okay, it is showing me that this time I would be unable to do an electronic verification of our identity. It doesn't give me an exact reason why, but
ntibyoroshe kubera ururimi iyo utahora urwiga uca usanga bikugora gutegera. nzoza ndacishamo nyene nza ndategera nyene utwo baza barambarira ndabe ko nzofatana dukende.
And now your turn to know.
Go on in, you're home.
Very nice.
Thank you. What did you think? Should we give it a round of applause? All right, we'll put the lights back on. And our fourth speaker arrived when the film was on. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I am Drusilla Mukorewera, and I am the Executive Director of Bridge Refugee Services.
Excellent. All right, we now have our full panel. Welcome all of you. All right, so we just watched a film, a few minutes of a family moving from Burundi. And this family, they're refugees. Do you know what the difference is between a refugee and an immigrant? Yes.
Refugee had fear, or there was turmoil in their country where they didn't feel safe, so America took them in.
Mm-hmm. And what's an immigrant?
You leave your country in search of a better life for yourself and your family.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And has the United States been founded on both refugees and immigrants?
Most definitely.
Most definitely. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to ask a couple questions of the panelists, but we're also going to ask you to talk as well, to answer questions, to ask questions, so this can be an interactive session. So it's not just us talking and you listening. So I think I want to ask each of you about what's your own personal experience as an immigrant or refugee. And Nick, I'm going to hold off on you for last, because actually you got to see two families go through this process. So I'm going to start with Sarah, and I want you to speak up. All right, because this is being recorded forever. So share with us your experience, what it was like to come here at 6 years old as an immigrant from Ethiopia.
Okay, so that's a really broad question. I would have to kind of dig into my history of my family as well as like my experience overall. I will say it's been a combination of two worlds into one person. especially these last 4 years coming into college, being fully immersed in this Western society, growing up at home, it was Ethiopian food, Ethiopian traditions. Parents were super hands-on. I was raised very heavily in my Ethiopian heritage. And coming to college is when I first kind of became immersed, even in the food, the culture, the social settings. My experience, I will say, overall, it's a blessing to be here without a doubt, but you give what you get, and I had to give a lot in order to gain so many of the opportunities that I've gained in order to be here. Dealt with a lot of kind of identity crisis, I will say. Back home, I'm known as Sara, but then when I'm not home, I'm known as Sarah. So those are kind of two people that, two hemispheres of the world that I kind of had to combine into one. I guess.
What was I guess you had to have, what was one moment when you felt like you got this understanding of the American situation?
Let's see. I will say it will be when I fell in love with an American, honestly. Yeah.
Have you yet?
When I fell in love with, yes.
You did?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. I will say that was what kind of really showed me that not only was I accepted here, but also, I mean, we're all humans. That would be the turning point, I would say. That's about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Look forward to hearing how this goes. Claudia, what about you?
I was born in Honduras. My parents, my mom is an American and my dad's a Honduran. So my dad wanted to pursue the American dream, and we left everything that we had in Honduras when I was 5 and we moved to the States. And we moved to Nebraska because that's where he got a job, because he was an agricultural engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my first experience, I guess, as an immigrant, and it's not the legal term of it because I am an American citizen as well.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But there are so many experiences that define being an immigrant. I never felt 100% Honduran, and I never really have felt 100% American. I'd never really thought of one or the other until my current partner, probably about 5 years ago, told me that I was biracial because of that, and I'd never even seen it, and I'd heard of people talking about races and nationalities, but I had never felt it myself personally because I was always in this like dark or gray area that my whole family lived in. So it was an interesting moment. It was definitely, he was telling me that it was an asset for me for some jobs I was looking for, because I could speak Spanish and I was culturally bilingual, so I could it wasn't just the language that I was understanding, but the culture I was working with. So those are some of the experiences I remember really well. I noticed with food, 5 or 6 years ago when I moved here, there were foods I would never touch. And I feel like my palate has changed over those 5 or 6 years. And I love Chick-fil-A sauce now. There's just weird different things that you appreciate when you go back and forth. But I think the big thing about being an immigrant is everything is new to you. The brands that you buy at the supermarket, the gestures people have. I lived in Germany for 1.5 years as well, and I remember going there was totally like being a child again, because you have to discover and explore everything all over. And just those different experiences helped me in the work that I do now. When I work with children, I work with adults who have recently moved to the country, I realize how everything is so different and overwhelming, because there's so much information to take in such a little amount of time.
Thank you. Drusilla.
As I said, my name is Drusilla, and I am originally from Rwanda. You did ask about the difference between a refugee and an immigrant. When you are a refugee, you are forced to leave your country. So I have been forced to leave my country because of my political opinion. So I got here in 2009. So when I fled my country, my youngest daughter was 12. Some of you are parents, you can imagine what are the feelings, and I did pass 1 year without communicating with my family. So when I fled, and after I got here, of course there is a long process. I passed 9 months. My daily business that time was eating, shower, and prayer. I couldn't go outside, so I was hidden in a safe house. So, and then I was escorted to go for interviews. They are talking about the screening process, all those. I did the screening process, escorted, and you know. Fortunately, I am very grateful that America gave me a chance to live and serve. When I got here, first of all, I was thinking, am I needed here? Because of my experience, I have been a member of government and parliamentarian. I was trying to apply for jobs, and even websites were built for Americans. So I was trained in Russia, and when I wanted to put my academic, university, the computer didn't let me go. And when we were applying for positions, many people were saying, you are overqualified. But nobody offered you an entry-level job. So my first job was working at Goodwill. But it was very, I was very thankful. And I started to look. I went to work in Farragut, which was far from North Knoxville. I started to look for something closer, and then I worked with disabled people, senior citizens, and then I worked with the child care system for 4.5 years. So I can tell you that I'm seeing the American dream, because my first dream was to see my children graduating from college. But when I fled, I thought, how can it happen? So as I said, my daughter graduated. She's now 21, she'll be 22 in October. She graduated from UT last May. She works for Amazon in Lexington, Kentucky. My son went to Maryville College, and then he's doing MBA at UT. He will graduate in December. I have a flight attendant, I have a nurse, and I have an accountant who went to LMU. So that's my first American dream. When I was processing to come here, my advice when I did get orientation, they told me you have to make many friends, American friends. So even if I traveled in many countries, even if I had experience, it was just confusing. Creating new friends, everything was new. So, but now I'm very lucky how many lives I did touch. And also I can tell you that when some people will say, who is your emergency contact? Some people will say none. Some will say Jesus. So I think I have now so many contacts, and I think I'm restoring the stolen, because I have a house now. All the children have cars. They are paying taxes. They are giving back to the community. So this is the American dream for me.
Yes.
I just had an observation with the difference between refugees and immigrants. And from my personal experience in the work that we do at Centro Hispano, many people in the Latino community especially are, I guess, given the name of an immigrant when the definition of refugee is what fits them best. And just recently today, I was reading on the news that someone ICE picked up in Austin, Texas, this past week was killed when he was returned to Mexico. And those people come to the country as well, but they come as immigrants, not under a refugee status. And coming from Honduras, Honduras is a very dangerous country, and our neighboring country, El Salvador, as well, because of gangs, and Mexico, of course, I'm sure everyone keeps up with the news there. So for me personally, it's really hard to come to terms with making a difference between those two with the name. One difference, and Ursula could explain much more about this, but when you come as a refugee, there's a very long process. You also get a social security number. You are welcomed into the country legally. And many of the people that come across, because of the land border that is between us and Mexico, don't have that same pathway, but the insecurities that they have in their own countries, I believe, bring them in with at least the name of a refugee. And that comes from a lot of different places. Like, I've lived in very safe places in the United States. I've been very lucky in that sense. But in Honduras, when I was growing up, I'm the oldest of 5 kids, it's 3 girls. When I would go to college, or when I would go to a bar on a weekend, back when I was at home, my dad always asked us to be home by 10, because if we drove our car, even if it was our own car, even if it was 10, 15 blocks, if someone, and it's usually a guy, so I'm not trying to stereotype, but if a guy was following me from the bar, or if I didn't talk to him at the bar and he would get mad and he wanted to do something to me, there's literally nothing my father could do to keep me safe. So a lot of the immigrants that are coming here from Latin America are looking for security as well. And going from the definition of refugee
Sure.
and immigrant, it just reminds me a lot of how this is a very, a lot of gray areas, and black and white is really hard to define, but just as a
Excellent, that's great. I'm going to actually ask a couple people in the audience. So Drusilla talked about the American dream, and I think it's kids graduating from college, paying taxes, owning cars, and having successful careers. What about you? What is the American dream to you?
Not everybody at once.
Yes.
How about to say, personally, American dream would be graduating high school, then college, and then getting a successful career launched,
Okay.
eventually making money.
Okay. Eventually making money. Okay, so an economic, okay, yes.
I would say it's about being able to sustain yourself, be able to make enough to sustain yourself fully, food, shelter.
Great, okay, excellent. Next.
For me, I guess it's kind of the idea you can be anything you want to become. Like anything you want to become is possible because, you know, you're in America.
Because you're an American.
I guess, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Who else? Who else has a personal definition of the American dream? Right now we're thinking about economics a lot, aren't we? But the American dream actually might be safety and security for some people. It might be the idea that you're safe at after 10 o'clock at night. It might be that your kids are going to have a better quality of life than you had. Okay. Sarah.
Yes.
How about I go on the other side, right? Instead of Sarah, I'm going to call you Sarah.
Sarah, thank you.
Sarah.
Thank
All
you.
right. Sarah, tell us about your vision of the American dream.
So my vision of the American dream, to put it simply, would just be to have the opportunity to be yourself without the oppression of danger. So safety is included in that too. And what I also wanted to add, my father's story is actually very similar to Mr. Stella. My father actually came to the States 3 years before the rest of my family did as a refugee. And after that was when my family got to come as immigrants. I really like the definition that both of you guys gave about the differences between being a refugee and an immigrant. And I will say that no matter why you come to this country, you do come for safety and opportunity. And yes, for safety and opportunity to grow is who you are. And I will also add that, so we started off in the Eastern Hemisphere, right? Poorest country in the world. And my dad came here 3 years before the rest of my family did. We actually did not get to communicate with him for years too when he first came, and then he was able to bring us here. The American dream, I would say, me and my family are now getting a chance to live, without a doubt. My sister is a third-year medical student. I'm here, going to finish school really soon. Brother just started school here too. It's the opportunity to be yourself, to be your full self. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that for the three of you that the vision of the American dream has changed over time as longer that you've been here?
Yeah, I wouldn't say changed, it's evolved. It's definitely evolved. At first we got here and it was you start off as survival mode, and then from that then you begin to thrive. And I think that's how it's evolved.
My question is that how do they teach American dream? Because sometimes when we argue with refugees coming here, not speaking the language, it's like the immigrants, and do hard work and survive and sustain families. But when we see some native, you don't see that resilience. And do they teach it in schools, in families? How does it work?
Where did you get your American dream views from?
Well, I just remember in English class, like we reading The Great Gatsby and everything, and through social studies in English class, they always told us that the American dream isn't really definable because it depends on who you are and what you seek in the country. And I think these people right here manifest that more than anything. And I mean, for me, my personal dream is just, it's I guess an economic dream, but in a sense, like, I just want to be able to have a family one day, you know, and be able to support them and have a family. So that's my dream. But like you said, safety for others. But yeah, it's not really definable.
So The Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess I just thought of, like, for me, I think it's like a cultural concoction. When he was talking about social studies in English classes, like, it's in popular culture. It's kind of an ideology that isn't really, like, explicitly stated. But growing up, I remember, like, I don't know if anyone remembers this movie, but it's called An American Tale. And I don't know, that was the first thing that got to mind when I thought of the American dream. Just kind of this idea of like coming somewhere for safety and security to be able to be the person you want to be.
In the back?
I was going to say privilege and opportunities that other countries do not give you. And I think so many times with education and homes and things like that, we don't realize that we are very privileged in some ways than others.
So we have movies, we have books.
You just touched on it. Basically, that's what I was gonna say.
You should come up here then and be the moderator.
What I was just gonna say was basically that my interpretation of like the American dream came from like what I saw on like TV with like movies, TV shows, and you know that idea of like how in movies you start here and then you at the end of the movie you're here and that kind of thing. So yeah.
And I think in America, the idea of mobility, right? That if you work hard, you go to school, you can change your social status. Oh, please, hi.
I would say that my American dream stems from my parents because both of them are immigrants. They came like for different reasons. It wasn't necessarily to search for like safety per se because they weren't like refugees, like they weren't like running from anything. It was more so like there were more opportunities out here. So I see that culturally I'm kind of similar to Sarah in the sense that I guess like my parents wanted something for their kids, but they also like wanted us to understand the culture as well. So my American dream is more so like seeing that success for my family, but also being able to provide for them, even though they're my parents.
Yeah.
It's like I look forward to the moment where I can go back and take care of them the way that they've taken care of me.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing. I travel around the world a lot. And people always, I tell people that my father lives with me, right? My father lives with me. He had a stroke. He hasn't been feeling well the last few years. And everyone tells me that's so un-American. They always say, I never thought of Americans taking their parents in. We thought you put them in nursing homes. Right? And there's a lot of, and I'm like, no, that's not how it works in America. I mean, there are facilities for that. But I think people have a lot of misperceptions about what the American dream is and how Americans act. And I think that's wonderful that you want to take care of your parents. Or maybe some of your favorite professors who have children you're looking for.
I would like to add a word that we have not mentioned is freedom. Freedom is a really big part of it. My idea of the American dream stems from comparison of my native country. If I was there, I would definitely be a wife to a man who I probably didn't know with children, really truly. But here I have the freedom to be who I want to be myself.
And you have the time. Yes, Claudia.
I think speaking for myself, but also speaking for a lot of the people that I serve, when we talked about mobility, it really hit a note. I know generations of people that have worked 12-hour days every single day of their lives in Honduras, and they have never been able to get out of poverty. And they haven't been able to get their children through school. They've never been able to buy a home. They've never been able to have their own land. And I think that is a concept we have, and I can't speak for Latin Americans, I can't even speak for Hondurans, I can speak for myself, but that you can work really hard in the States, and you will have to, because the people that I work with understand that and do that, but they also know and believe that if they work really hard here, they can do something. And in our own countries, that's not always the case. So I lived in Austin, Texas before I moved here, and my first job in Austin, because I knew no one there, just drove my car there and said, okay, I'll go. My first job was in a restaurant, and I was front of house because I spoke English, but the back of house was, all of them were Guatemalans except for maybe 2 of them. And I talked a lot with the guys back there. They were almost all men, and their dream was to work as many hours as they could, spend the least amount of money they could, so they could go home, start a business for their family, buy a small plot of land, so that they could live a simple life. It wasn't these high, they didn't want a mansion, but that simplicity was, and that security was something that they were looking for. And I haven't heard it yet. This is something I'm going through personally right now, and it's the opportunity to think about what happiness is to me. And maybe I'm in a different step, so I'm working on my career, and I've finished college and paid off my debts and all these things. But just the question of, what makes me happy? Will I be able to work a 9-to-5 job or a 60-hour job or a 70-hour job at a place that I'm not passionate about or something that I don't truly believe in? So I feel like here in the States, I can think about that, and if I want a different job, I can go and pursue a different job. In Honduras, my family owns a restaurant, and I could have stayed there if I would have wanted to, but I would probably be running my family restaurant because finding a job there is extremely hard. So that questioning what happiness means to us is something I think is part of the American dream as well.
I wanted to add something about the freedom of speech and movement.
Yes.
This is something we have to cherish and be happy and proud of having, because in some areas even you don't speak freely. What I'm shown in the community, on the TV, challenging even the president, it doesn't happen in many countries in the world. And also what I wanted to say as an American dream, I think, be able to make a difference in people's lives. Not just me, but what do I do for my community? What can I do for the neighborhood? So when I started, even the voting rights, so when I became a US citizen, the thing I couldn't wait was for go and vote. Because expressing myself and voting for somebody who will represent me means a lot for me.
And you mentioned that you were in Parliament?
Yes, I was.
You were in Parliament. We have a parliamentarian here. This is like a congressperson right here. And that is one of the interesting things about refugees is they're from all walks of life. So you'll have PhDs, you'll have government officials or people who are in the law profession who speak out. And I think we take for granted the ability to speak out. You can speak out, and what happens? Nothing really, right? But in some countries, speaking out puts a bullseye on your forehead or your back or your family's back and puts you under enormous pressure. So many people who come to the United States as refugees or immigrants or a mix of both are actually just looking for an opportunity to be able to speak out on issues that matter to them. Sarah and then Claudia.
My father was the CEO of Red Cross, and he actually became a refugee back in Ethiopia because he spoke up against the government, and he had to go. Freedom of speech, huge.
I had a very good friend that moved to Honduras while I lived there, and she was a Peace Corps volunteer. She was a very tall, very white, loud-spoken, extremely successful woman that moved to Honduras, and she was working with coffee co-ops, and she was working for a co-op that was extremely corrupt, and she started speaking out, and it was very interesting, and I just thought of it now when we said this, that my dad, the Honduran, so my mom's American, my dad was like, Carrie, you are going to get killed in that community if you don't shut up. And she just kept fighting, and she kept talking to people, and in the end, she moved into our house. It was a couple of villages away. I lived in a bigger city, but she moved in to our home because she could no longer work in the community she was, because it was so different from where she was coming from, and her experience in the United States is working for a business and trying to fix these problems, but understanding that and being culturally aware of that when we go outside of the country is also, that cultural sensitivity is, I think, something really important to look out for.
It really is. It really is. And that's why traveling is so important. How many of you have gone abroad? Excellent. How many of you plan to go abroad? All right, for those of you whose hand has not gone up yet, come see me afterwards. So we got to get you out of the United States, even if it's over like Sydney or to London or up to Canada or something. Here's what I want to do next. Nick Geithner can talk about his film of the two families that the landmark Land Grant films followed. He's going to tell you a little bit about what he saw in the American dream and the respect for the American dream in these two families. And then what we're going to do is open it up for questions from you. So I'm really hoping that you can ask some good questions, and we'll keep this conversation going, because are you learning a lot right now? Excellent. Nick, tell us what it was like to follow those two families around. Tell them about the second family as well, and how they viewed the American dream and their respect for the United States.
I mean, I think this project was a lot bigger than what we really signed up for. And it was because of all the complexity that is the lives of refugees coming here. And I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to Drusilla and to Bridge Refugee Services because of the work that they do. These individuals coming here, every refugee family is like every American family. They're very, very different. This family spent 12 years in a camp, knew very, very little English. The mother was pre-literate. And then another family that we got to spend some time with was from Baghdad. Both the parents had advanced degrees. And yet when they came here, they both had immense struggles. They had immense successes. And they had the whole range of the spectrum because them, just like us, have lives. And I think that's the thing that I hope is the biggest takeaway from this film, is that although we make them something else, we say, oh, refugees, we say immigrants, they're really just people, and they're people in our community. And when they come here, once they come here, we need to do our best to try to make it easy for them. And I think that's the thing that really sat with me. And then just moments like that where we see this family who's been living in a camp for 12 years get the key to their first apartment ever and get to see them walk in. I mean, that's a moment that will stick with me forever. That was, I mean, just shooting that, it was hard to keep shooting because it was such a moving scene to see this family really just truly happy in a way that I think, I don't know if I've experienced. I mean, say for birth of kids and things like that. And so, yeah, I think that was...
Excellent. One last question for the panel before I open it up. Can you remember an act of kindness or a special moment from somebody who helped you better understand America, the American dream, or just making you feel better about yourself? And if it's not one, could you think of two possibly? Because I think what we want to know is how can we, as individuals, reach out and help others? So can you think of some moments of kindness, of clarity that happened that helped you along your way?
Definitely. Ms. Alice Ward. Yes, for sure. The example that she sets, just as a person, it's beautiful to see. When I see her, I see who I want to be, who I aspire to be, and to see that in somebody who is from this country, you know, it's beautiful. Yes.
Excellent. All right. So a role model.
A role model.
Excellent. Claudia, can you think of any moments?
Mine was really simple. I was in a train stop in former East Germany, and I didn't know how to buy a ticket because it was all in German. And I was about to miss my train, and then I had no way to get there if not. And then I turned around, and this person, without understanding English themselves, came up to me and helped me purchase a ticket because they saw that I was lost. And so just helping someone when you, or just, I feel like a lot of times we don't notice what's happening around us, and sometimes it's pretty easy to see when someone needs some help if we can just, connect to them for a moment. So offering help, even if we don't necessarily if it's not accepted, but just offering it is a really big one for me.
And I want to say something before I give two names which touched my life. So the asylum seekers, some people also should know who is an asylee. the asylum seekers are the people who have the same condition of persecution like refugees, but they get here legally and the process happens in America. So they will have the same condition of persecution, race, religion, political opinion, but when they get here, they start to apply for asylum status here. And Bridge helps them only after they get asylum status. So before then, they don't get any government help. Other people we serve are what we call SIVs, and they will follow in these presidential executive orders. So the SIV people are the people who serve the US Army abroad in Iraq, Afghanistan. So when they are helping US Army, they are targeted, so then they have to leave. So the two people, there are many people who touched my life. And the two I remember is my friend David and Roseanne. They did a lot for me. So I remember when my children were about to come, they gave me $3,000. They didn't know me. They didn't know the family. The second time, when my son had to go to college in Melville and he got scholarship, but he had to do community work. So we did have only one car, and I couldn't move from Knoxville and then go to Melville back and forth to drop off my son. And then when I went to the bank to ask for a loan, they say, "You are not credible. Your credit score is so low." And I said, "I do not owe money to nobody." So I was thinking it's easy to give me money. So these are the cultural other issues. And then I went to that same family and say, "I need a cosigner." And some people say, "Oh, you are lucky." Some parents do not even sign for their children. So they signed for the second, and then when we wanted the third car, they signed up for the second time. Another friend of mine, Carol, she goes to bed at 8 o'clock. But when my children came, it was midnight. She was standing with me and other people from church to welcome my children. And that first welcome is very and huge for us, because I remember the first night I arrived in America. This is why at the end when we talk about how we can get involved, welcoming is very important.
And to bounce off of what Claudia said about how giving back helps out a lot with that too. I completely agree with that. Giving back to this country makes you feel more, I wouldn't say more welcoming to it, but it just kind of shows that when you can give to something that you're very appreciative to, it makes you that much more.
And I just some facts about refugees, since we're talking about them. Bridge Refugee Services gets about $900, $925, I believe, to that is money for the refugees for the first 3 months that they're here. That's it. Not $900 a month, not $900 plus apartment rent plus food. No, $925. And that's how they fund refugees for the first 3 months. And so I think we think of this as this big money spending thing, but when it comes to federal support, it's about $925 per refugee. And so, I mean, and that's it. Like their flight, like you saw the family arriving here. Later in the film, you see Katie Willocks, the caseworker from Bridge, explaining how much they're going to be paying per month for the next 3 years for that flight. They pay that back. And so I think that's one really important thing about refugees, is that it's not a money drain. This isn't a money question.
I would really advocate for anybody who can to volunteer with the Bridge program. I did it 1 year. It's amazing, amazing, very rewarding.
Excellent. And you know you can pick Bridge on your United Way campaign.
Yeah, and the Amazon Smile program.
Kruger,
yeah, there you go.
A lot of things. All right, well, let's listen to you. What questions do you have for our panelists? And I know there's a journalism class in here, right? So I expect some good questions. Yes?
So who determines who is a refugee, who is a immigrant? Sorry. So who determines that?
So we are now waiting for what they call presidential determination. the federal fiscal year is from October 1st to September 30th. So we are almost closing our fiscal year. So normally the president and the Congress get together and say how many refugees we can get during the fiscal year. So we are waiting. Normally, maybe they say it can be late, but for this fiscal year, when the President Obama was there, they did 110, but the current government reduced the number for 50,000. So we are waiting to see. We are always advocating for more because this is the worst refugee crisis in the world. So we are advocating now for 75,000. So I know that there is another program for immigrants to come here, and the president defined that it's every year. I think American gets like 50,000 people who are coming through the Rotary on green cards. So when you read the presidential executive order, you will see different categories. They are talking, this one are attached, this one are not concerned. So I will encourage you to go through all those presidential order and then learn more about who is eligible for which program.
And then the determination of where refugees can come from, and definitely correct me, it would come from the UNHCR, the High Commission on Refugees. And they do a lot of that determination, and they do all the deciding of who is a refugee in those foreign countries. Like in Iraq, it's the UN that's determining who is refugees, who can get placed in a third country. And then it's not until after that, that third party, the UN deciding all of this, that they are then approached by the US, and so a refugee that makes it through all those steps would then have to go through a number of steps with the US government. But Drusilla can, she's been through it.
What I can tell also is that refugees do not choose where to go. So I didn't choose to come to Knoxville. People ask me, why Knoxville? So you don't choose unless my children were sent here because I was here as a parent. So unless you have some relationship of affidavit, so they can send you there, or you have a sponsorship who can send you there, but they do not choose where to go. And also what I wanted to say is that we have national agencies which work straight with the federal government, and Bridge works with Episcopal Migration Ministries and Church World Service. So we are local affiliate in those national agencies. So these are the ones who are dealing with the federal government. And the main condition, we do say, like when I do abstract for 2018 fiscal year, we say we have languages in the community, we have affordable housing, we have medical care facilities, but the only two condition I put on them, which we can, now we have problem with the housing. It's hard to find affordable housing for 6 and plus families. And then it will be hard for people who are ready to go to nursing homes, because we provide interpretation for all the services so the client can communicate and get solved. So we say we can accept everybody except large size families, 6 and plus, and then people who are ready to go to nursing home. And also we try to have languages on the staff, but also in the community. Like people will ask me about Syrians. So we didn't get Syrian this year, but they were in the pipeline. But in our office in Chattanooga, they did get a family of 6. So probably next year, we are hoping maybe to get 1. So, and what I wanted also to say that is like when we do projection, so the federal government will review them according to the presidential determination, and then they will tell us how many people we can serve. We were planning to have 245. So on average, normally Knoxville get 200 people every year. But for this year, we did get 115, and we are getting 1 family coming this week of 7. So it will be roughly 50%, so no more than that.
And to be clear, just to underscore this, if it's if this person, if this family, if whatever, is a refugee in East Tennessee and they settled here, they came through Drusilla's office. Bridge handles every single refugee that settles in East Tennessee with a staff of how many?
Now we are at 9.
Yeah, 9. Katie, who you saw in there, is the caseworker for the family that we follow. I think during while she was working with that family, she had 37, does that sound right?
Yes.
37 other open cases. That means 37 other families that she is the first contact for, that she's dealing with all these things from how to catch a bus to how to get a job. So her call for volunteering with Bridge is one that's needed. They need help.
Another thing I want to say, many people ask is, are they obliged to stay in Knoxville? We were talking about a freedom of movement. If there are better opportunities or they have families in another city, so they can go everywhere because they are screened. You know, there are many agencies which are engaged in the screening process. There is no way I can say, stay in Knoxville. So they can go everywhere in America where they can find a better life.
Excellent. Questions, more questions? Please.
What's the overall caseload for Bridge?
Can you say it again?
How many cases do you have overall?
So we have, as I say, normally on average 200 individual coming. Last year we had 236. So normally a case manager manages 70 to 75 individual. My goal is to reduce that to one out of 50. So if you find like we are doing a fundraiser in December, I just got 50,000 to hire a development director. So I hope that private funds can come to in the organization, but that is a high ratio. So this is why we need interns, we need volunteers, and we have been blessed to work with UT, but if every case manager, even myself, I need one. So even if every case manager will have intern and on continuous process and volunteers, I think we can help them to, because the burnout is, and then the turnover, because we are working in a stressful environment. All these people, many are having traumatic situation. They saw people being killed. They have been tortured or in front of their parents or something like that. So this is why integration takes a long time. So, but with enough people and support, they overcome the situation.
Yes.
How many languages do you each speak?
I speak 5.
5, okay.
I speak 2.
2 and
3. 3.
Okay, I'm just curious. And
You know, we've been talking. Was that your question? Do you have more? So, you know, the topic of immigration, it's in the headlines every day, isn't it? And we've been talking about refugees and immigrants. Well, there's a whole group of people who have been brought here by their parents. Have you ever heard of DACA? What does DACA stand for?
Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
Excellent. And what does it mean?
It means that, this might be wrong because I don't know like a ton about it, but if someone is brought here from a Spanish-speaking country and they were younger, they're not going to be at the top of the list for ICE to be deported if the president issues that we should start deporting people. So, because they were brought here not under their own will.
Because they were children.
Yeah.
Yes. There's also no pathway to citizenship for children under DACA. They're just allowed like a work permit, driver's license, ability to go to school and things like that. But there is no pathway for them for citizenship.
Okay.
Oh, and also, sorry, I know a lot about this. They are
Please.
not, sorry, they're also all, I guess screened is a good word. No one who's ever committed a crime is allowed to be placed under DACA. I'm not sure government assistance-wise. I'm not sure. No?
No in-state tuition.
Okay, no in-state tuition. It's very restricted. Like you have to make like the people under DACA have been screened heavily to be able to be in DACA, but they're basically protected from deportation, allowed like settlement, allowed to like live a semi-normal life, but without a pathway to citizenship.
Okay. So where's the American dream going to happen for them?
That's a good question because unfortunately DACA, even though it protects the children that are brought over here from ICE and things like that, it still is kind of a limbo area for them because even though they can live well, they're still stuck in that gray area of not actually being able to become a citizen fully.
And living well is a real struggle there. One of my very good friends is a DACA recipient. He's 19 years old, and his parents have been saving for his college. they've saved $80,000 to pay for his Pellissippi degree, if that's where he chooses to go, because he has so few options across the country. There are states that do give DACA students in-state tuition. There's many people have a misunderstanding that because you're undocumented, you don't pay taxes. Luckily for everyone, the government does have a way around that. So even if you do not have legal status in the United States, you do pay taxes. It's called an ITIN, an individual tax identification number. So these families are paying taxes, and a couple of months back there was a law that was trying to be passed called Tuition Opportunity, which was if a child was a student in a high school in Tennessee, they could go to any college in Tennessee for in-state tuition, and it was voted down by one of our House representatives from Knoxville. And the kids that are living in our community right now are really having a tough time. We have a focus group of kids we're working with at Fulton High School, and when we went there, there's a lot of dropout because they're like, what am I doing here if I can't go to school afterwards? And unfortunately, they take a lot of under-the-table jobs because there is nowhere else. A lot of the kids don't know either that they are DACA because their parents want them to live a normal life. And then once they want to go out for spring break, or they want to apply for college, or they want to apply for different opportunities, they find out then that they're not eligible for it. Drusilla and I work a lot together, but if you are interested as well, with Centro Hispano, there are very few places you can practice Spanish in Knoxville, so if you do have any Spanish language interest, or you want to freshen up whatever you do, if you've traveled to Spain or if you went to Central America, we have a lot of different volunteer opportunities as well, working with students that are children or working with adults that are learning English, or just general exposure to different cultures. I always love, we talk so much about people volunteering because until you put a face and a name and a story to someone, a lot of times they don't become a personal issue to you. And even for me, it wasn't a personal issue until I started working with Centro Hispano, because I didn't see the lives that were affected or my friends that were affected. And I'm sure Drusilla has a super impactful personal story with this as well, but I think it's really healthy for all of us, and I do it often as well, but getting out of our comfort zone of what we consider our regular life and just going for a day to find out how someone else lives or what struggles someone else goes through makes us more compassionate. So I encourage all of you to, there are other organizations, it's not just our two organizations as well, there are many, many different places you can go to, homeless shelters, you can see what's happening with the opioid epidemic and our, like, whatever your view wants to be or whatever your experience you're looking for, there is a place in Knoxville for you to go, and it will change your life.
Excellent.
I wanted to say something about, they say it's all about relationship. So if you want to trust refugees and immigrants, and I know many people now have fear because of what they listen to in the news. So just get into actions with them, get involved with them, and you will see how they have those healing stories, they have successful stories, which can empower you and enrich you. And I wanted also to link the refugees and DACA in terms of education. So when you come here, there are few degrees who are transferable when you come here. Even doctors, they have to go back to school. But the thing is, when you have that degree, and they say it's not transferable, you can't get financial aid. Because they say you are seeking for a second degree, which the first one doesn't work. So these are the things also we will advocate, maybe we hope it will change. My husband, when he came back here, he was a banker for 12 years, working with Central Bank, and coming here to negotiate contracts in America. But when you become a refugee, you are just second-class person. So he had to go back to UT to seek for another degree in order to be, practicing. So these are the challenges sometimes we do have, but I hope maybe this is because the immigration is federal thing. I wish some can be done, like education, if it can be resolved at the state level. I think probably we can come back to UT and have a degree with on financial aid.
You know, the last couple of panels, one of the words that keeps coming up is called empathy. What's empathy? Come on.
Put yourself in their shoes.
Putting yourself in their shoes, excellent. And so it seems like what they're suggesting is that we are empathetic to the people who are coming here. Now, vowels are welcoming, right? Right, that's the whole idea of the vowel tradition. So what can you do as individuals? You're students, you work part-time, you go home to your communities. What do you think that you can do to make Knoxville or the UT campus more welcoming to immigrants or refugees or asylum seekers or any of the terms that we've used today? What are some suggestions that you as individuals or UT as a system could do?
Care enough to learn.
Care enough to learn. Learn, so what does that mean? Where would they learn?
Right here, by communicating with those that are different from you.
All right, so seeking out people who are different from you, excellent. What other suggestions do you have? Or what things perhaps have you already done? You seem to know a lot about DACA. Have you done anything good, or have you worked on anything to try to make this place more welcoming?
Well, I guess I can share. Maybe 2 years ago, I had an opinion over immigration and illegal immigrants specifically that might mirror a lot of the opinions that people have today with the attitude that there is towards immigration. And throughout some events that happened, I had developed friendships with people who were from Mexico. And I didn't know their legal status. It really didn't cross my mind because they were just people to me, and I learned about them. They became very close friends of mine. And then one day when we were all sitting around eating dinner at El Portón, one of the people revealed that they were illegal. And it kind of struck me because I've built this attitude and this opinion over illegal immigrants, and then now I'm faced with like a person and my friend as well who was beside me, and we just looked at each other and we said, this man is the most hardworking person. He's one of the most kindest, one of the most humble people that I've ever met in my life. I don't want him to go. Like, he's like one of the best people that we know. My friend can attest to that. And so this has really, it kind of opened my mind. And kind of what Ms. Caballero said is, you got to really go out and meet these people and form relationships, and then you'll realize that they're people before the term immigrant. They're just people like you and I. And then I've actually, like you, I've fallen in love, and I'm actually now dating this undocumented immigrant. And it's really opened my eyes to the entire world, and I've done like really an entire flip to how I thought about it.
Congratulations.
Yes. I think something that's important is, I guess, being a voice that helps project another voice. And by doing so, I mean, like, because we have the platform that we have and we have the freedom that we have, like, being that voice or that advocate for people who may not have the same, I guess, respect as we do, just being involved in, you know, actually speaking up, not being afraid to use the rights that we have, and just getting involved in these political issues that may be going on. Yeah.
Thank you. What else? Oh.
I'd just like to add that I think all of this about immigrants and refugees and thinking about these things and meeting these people and talking to them is incredibly important, but it shouldn't end with these two issues or these two classes of people. Anytime we're talking in broad strokes, we need to think about who we're actually talking about. Our documentary before this was about drug-addicted mothers who gave birth to NAS babies. Another group of people that we were making legislative decisions on based off really limited knowledge of this class of people. And I think empathy is what we need in all of these cases. We need to talk to people. We need to understand their lives, and we need to understand that the way that people got to these places are varied and interesting and unique, just like our lives. And we could have ended up there very easily.
I wanted to say also, like, we have different opportunities of volunteering. We're talking about languages. So for us, we say the 3 pillars of refugee integration or immigrants integration are learning the language, employment, and then community engagement. And I think every one of us can find a place, you know, and then teach them English, become mentor, you know, fundraise. We talk about speaking out. Now people will ask you or talk about this, and they will say, oh, I have a good friend like you. He's or she's an immigrant or refugee. They are contributing this way because, you know, we can be safe and kind. I know America has a big technology. They are doing good screening, but you can connect even, you know, people. When I came in, I was thinking, UT is my place. You see, now, after 8 years, this is where I can come at UT because I learned a lot, but it doesn't mean I did gain a lot of experience. I learned, but technically I could have started at UT, but I didn't have somebody to connect me and to help me and navigate and do things like that. And also I talk about dying intellectually. For those skilled immigrants and refugees, it's like you. We say human way, you know, we are all human. So if you become a mentor or you go, and also take them to the national parks. If you are in the neighborhood, learn who is there because they are friends of us, they are students like our children. So it's just find them out, welcome them, and then also donate. Donate your time, donate money, donate cash, or connect me. I am organizing a fundraising event in December, so I can hire at least an extra case manager. Who among you know somebody who can give $1,000? Raise your hand. Who knows somebody who can give $1,000 or 10 or 50 or 20? You can do that, can you? So these are the things you can do.
Do I have any other hands up in the back? Yes.
I think a very important thing that I learned, I used to work for a nonprofit organization, and there was a lot of kids that they were all elementary school age, and they were kind of like you, Sarah. They said they kind of struggled with their identity of wanting to be American, but then also wanting to still be part of their culture from home, but they struggled because they felt like if they spoke the native language, if they did stuff that was native to their culture, that they would be outcasted. So I think it was really important that whenever I was working with them, I didn't constantly tell them like, oh, this is how we do it here, or this is what's popular here, this is what's great here. But by asking them questions like, oh, well, like, what do you like what are some interesting things from like where you're from, like what are your favorite foods, and stuff like that, to make them feel like they have an identity here, and they're not just trying to conform to what we are, but they also keep in touch with their culture.
May I say something about that? There is a terminology called assimilation. And I do not like that word. Because people would say, they do not assimilate. How can I assimilate? So I have good values I brought from Africa, and I want to keep them. And I will get good values for America, and combining them make me a better person. You know, it's like when I talk about marriage here with my kids, how we do the ceremony, we talk about engagement and things like that. And baby shower, for example, in our culture, you just wait 8 days after the baby is there. So, but you learn different things. But I wanted people to say, me, I like many things from here. But there are things also I will not take from here. So, but if I do combine both, you know, and this is what, when I discuss with my children, since they have been here in college and high school, you know, I see the cultural differences. But I think integration is better than assimilation.
Ms. Worth, did you want to say anything? We have a few more
We still
minutes.
have a few minutes.
Okay.
There's one more question.
I would love more questions. Yes. Oh, and then back to you. We'll do two.
I was just gonna ask, I guess like touching off of that, how are you guys going to, I guess, integrate your cultures into the next generation? So for you, it would be like your grandkids, like how will you keep that culture alive? And like your children, like how, if they're born here like I was, like how are you guys gonna keep your culture alive in their lives?
So being first generation, this is something that I think about a lot, about what my kids or my siblings' kids will be like. And I think the way that I'm going to be able to spread it onto them is to keep it alive inside of me. And that's where the whole, you know, you give what you get, the best of both worlds. You got to deal with both negatives and positives. So as I'm trying to keep that culture alive in me, I still have to assimilate with this one. So I think it's just a matter of balancing it within yourself, knowing yourself. Yeah.
I speak the language as often as I can, and I throw parties as often as I can.
Okay. That's a good way of doing it. Excellent.
Yeah, I say that the languages, so I want them to speaking my native language, because I think if they go back home, I want them to be able to communicate with the people who are there. And also I want, if I had the power in America to make changes in the education system, I think this is the time to learn many languages as people could, because we are in a global economy, so it's just not Hispanic. Now I'm not bilingual. When they call bilinguals, I don't feel, but I'm multilingual. I don't feel like, because I don't speak the Spanish, I'm not there. So, but another thing we do is also to learn from here. And I tell them, I have power from heaven as a parent, because parenting for me, and I think one of the things that the refugees and immigrants are bringing here also is family values. Because when I see really how the family are getting dislocated and marriages and things like that, I want like that, the cultural things good we brought from family background can keep accompanying my children.
We have one last question in the front row.
Okay, so I actually have a couple different ones. So, sorry. Firstly, I guess for Guinea and then Ida on the end, is there any specific criteria for where an immigrant or where a person is or their family is placed whenever they come here? Just out of curiosity, or is there like any way they can select that, or is it just completely random? And then also my second question, what for you guys, what do you think is the one aspect of our culture here that you can most closely relate to your culture now?
And before they answer that, you have gold sheets, ladies and gentlemen. Can you make sure that you fill these out? So only through your input can we continue to give you excellent workshops.
I love that second question. Can we end on that one?
Yeah.
So what about American culture? Have you embraced or found that works well with your culture?
The expression of love.
Love?
Yeah.
Love today. Okay? Claudia?
I think the values are very similar. Work hard, honor your family. There's very few things that make us different, I would say. It's more what makes us so similar.
Sure. Okay.
I think food and music is the same, but I miss the social life in Africa. When we have a wedding, it's the whole day, not just few hours. So we party, we dance, and when we celebrate, and one of the feasts I like in America is Thanksgiving. I like that day. And then the friend who taught me how to cook a turkey, and then the next year I did it, now they can eat up to the bones.
All right, excellent. All right, is there anything else you want to say?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank our distinguished panel. Panel moderator. And each one of you for taking this opportunity to come to be a part of this. So when you hear the word next time, refugee, immigrant, I want you to think hard about that and what's going on. And put a face with that word and what you witnessed and what you've been a part of today. Okay? In addition to that, again, I'm Alice Worth. I didn't introduce myself, but ladies and gentlemen, only through your input, word of mouth, can we bring you sessions like this. We are just really want to give you an opportunity to voice your opinion, dialogue, ask questions. So you have a program. I just want to highlight a few other events that we will have. Tonight, in this very room, 7 o'clock, there will be a dinner. We will be looking and dialoguing about emotional intelligence in the classroom from 7 to 8. Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we have our mayor, Madam Roher, that will be in the auditorium, and there'll be a reception 4:30. then our mayor speaking from 5 to 6. And then on Thursday, our accommodating activity where we are building community. We're not sitting here listening. We are out, you are out talking to your professors. The dean and directors and staff members will be preparing hamburgers, hot dogs, veggie burgers, veggie beans, all of these things for you. There will be entertainment, cultural performances. There will be opportunity to just interact from the moment that you arrive until you leave. So we want you to be a part of this event. This is your college. We've been doing this for 8 years. And we're working on a formula because we believe in this. We believe in having a warm and welcoming college, an environment to prepare you to be contributors in your community. We talk about things right here. Drusilla has given you a chance to move out of your comfort zone to join, to be a part of something. So let's try it and put that on your dossier or resume. Have a good evening. Thank you. I'll be right back.